Welcome to the campus of North Idaho College and today's broadcast of the North Idaho College Public Forum. The crew is comprised of North Idaho College television students. Your moderator is North Idaho College political scientist, Tony Stewart.
Today we are very happy to bring to you a program about the American Festival Ballet, which is headquartered in Boise, Idaho. Our guest today is Joanne Manita, who is the executive director of the American Festival Ballet. Her offices are located in Moscow, Idaho, at the university, but as I've indicated, the ballet works out of Boise. The ballet is now 12 years old and has performed in 32 states, but the state of Idaho receives much of the honor of the performance of the American Festival Ballet since they are a production from Idaho. Joanne, welcome to our program. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, Tony.
I'm happy to welcome to the panel to question our guest concerning this very delightful topic. First of all, regular panelist Mary Lou Reed, who's been with me since almost the conception of this program. And I have a special privilege today to welcome back to the program someone who served for 6 or 7 years on the program and has been gone for 3 years. And I congratulate her on recently graduating from law school, and she has returned, Janelle Burke.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to have you both back working with me. We'll commence the questioning with Mary Lou Reed.
Thank you, Tony. Joanne, why don't you talk to us a little bit about your favorite subject, which is the American Festival Ballet. I've known you for a long time, and I realize how diligent you have been in promoting the cause of this particular ballet. Tell us a bit about the company, please.
Well, I think one of the exciting things about our company is the breadth that we have. To be a ballet company in Idaho and the inland Northwest, because we consider ourselves part of eastern Washington and Idaho, it's quite a challenge because we have to perform for communities of all sizes. We have to be on the road a good deal of the time because communities are so far apart. So we have all the challenges that are met by a ballet company in any normal size city, which are considerable, plus all the extra challenges of being located in the West. And we have, I think, for 12 years been meeting these challenges fairly successfully.
Yes. How big is the company, Joanne?
We have 11 dancers.
And you've had a lot of changes in the last few years. You might talk a little bit about those changes. I think some of our viewers may know you better as Ballet Folk.
That's right.
That was a name change, place change.
The company was organized in Moscow as Ballet Folk of Moscow 12 years ago. And our original directors were Carl Petrick and Jeanette Allen. The first change came when Carl became the executive director of the Idaho Commission on the Arts and moved to Boise. And then we changed directors, and Stephen Wistrich and his wife Elizabeth Rowe Wistrich came to head the company. The first change that took place really was a change of name. Ballet Folk of Moscow turned out not to be the best name in the world for a ballet company because, first of all, people thought we were a folk dance company, which we definitely were not. Second of all, people thought we were from, when we toured throughout the country, they thought we were from Moscow, Russia. And in fact, people would say to the dancers, "Oh, you speak English so well." Or people would come expecting the Kirov ballet, and here are our dancers with a very American style. So and not only that, when we'd hold auditions, as we do to hire our dancers in New York, dancers would come with their folk dance costumes and their folk dance shoes. So we had to clarify our image, and that's why 3 years ago we changed the name of the company to American Festival Ballet. But people throughout the state still call us Ballet Folk, and we answer to that name too. The second change was last year when, actually the year before that. The year before that, we discovered that we were serving the entire area, and it would make more sense to be a regional organization. So we regionalized our company in that we changed from a local board of directors in Moscow to a regional board of directors. We also regionalized our volunteer group, and we're now in the process of establishing volunteer groups in all of the communities we serve, such as Pocatello, Coeur d'Alene, Boise, Moscow, Idaho Falls, Spokane, etc. Then the last change that took place was last year when we moved the company to Boise. Now we have actually 2 homes, and you could only do this in Idaho, really. We have a home in Moscow and a home in Boise. Half our staff is in Moscow, half of it is in Boise. We have a school at the University of Idaho and a branch school in Lewiston, and we're just starting a school in Boise. So we really are very spread out, and I think that's kind of what I mean about the challenge of the West. You have to be different to survive in the West.
You spend a lot of time on the telephone and a lot of time on the road.
Much too much time on the telephone. I think we should get huge grants from all the telephone companies, because I know I'm spending twice as much as they ever give us. And yes, a lot of time on the road.
Janelle Burt.
How does one prepare for a career in ballet, and how do you select your dancers? Where do they come from?
Okay. The first question, it's kind of axiomatic that it takes 10 years to make a dancer. And the second step of that is that most dancers only have a career of 10 years. And you have to think about what that means, you know, spending that much time for that short a career. Girls especially generally start when they're quite young. About 8 years old is when you would start your ballet training. And then you study for about 4 or 5 years before you go on point, which is the vision of your ballet dancer, of course, being a point dancer. Men sometimes are able to start later if they've been quite athletic, if they've, like I know a dancer who had been a skier, and we had a dancer who had been a wrestler, because they're already well-trained physically, and they don't have to learn to dance on point, so they have a little easier time than the girls do. Our dancers come from all over the country. We hold auditions in New York City each year, and this year we also held one in LA. Now, we don't get entirely new dancers every year, thank goodness, and we really like to keep the same dancers year after year, because what you're doing is you're working for a certain style of the company, and that takes a while to develop. And so you have to take dancers who have trained in various places and pull them together. So it's better not to have a huge turnover, but it does happen each year that dancers for one reason or another leave. And we do hold auditions in New York, along with every other company in the country. It's kind of like a mating season is what I think of. All the dancers in the country kind of flock to New York City, and all the directors flock to New York City. And for about a month's period of time, there's auditions about every other day. And by the end of the time, everyone settles with who they're going to settle with, and they spread out back to where they're going. All of our dancers have danced professionally in other companies. Several of them with very leading companies, like Kirsten Ferger, who's danced with American Ballet Theater, and our director, Stephen, has danced with the Stuttgart Ballet, and these are, of course, the most prestigious companies in the world. We have to do that because we're a small company. We wish we were larger so we could take some dancers in almost as apprentices and give them their first chance. But when you've only got 11, they've got to be very strong dancers, and they've got to have performed professionally beforehand.
What function does your school serve then?
Well, our school serves the function of training people in dance, and we do hope eventually to be able, I see what you're getting at, Janelle, to be able to work our dancers into the company. We do have in Moscow a junior company. We've had that on and off since we started our school. The school was started 1 year before the company, so it's 13 years old. And the junior company gives local performances. And we're now going to start a junior company in Boise. In addition, when we do Nutcracker, we use the dancers from our company to tour with the company, from our schools to tour with the company, which means about 20 are touring. Plus, we use local dancers in each community we go to. So we end up with a cast of 220 children from 10 different communities throughout Idaho, which is, you know, really pretty exciting. But we've been in the frustrating situation. There have been 2 or 3 very excellent dancers that we have trained in our school, but we don't have enough money for an apprenticeship program to take them into the school. And when you have the struggle of paying your professional dancers each month, you have to put that as your first priority to get the company established. But it is our dream to be able to have an apprenticeship program so that Idaho dancers could work right into the company.
Joanne, I wanted to recognize that your artistic director, Mr. Wistridge, who came to North Idaho College this week, and he gave a lecture to our students, and I just want to say to the public it was absolutely outstanding. Anyone who was there learned so much about the preparation for ballet, and then the performances and the techniques that are used and the types of dance, and I would recommend him highly to any group for a lecture to learn to appreciate ballet. And you, certainly as the executive director, was responsible for us having him here for this program, and maybe you could take some time to share with viewers like myself who have not had a background in ballet the awesome demand that there is upon the dancers to prepare for performances. If you could do 2 things, I think it'd be greatly appreciated, because later we're going to be showing some of the performances on the program. 2 things. 1, what kind of equipment must a ballet dancer have? And 2, what goes into preparation before a tour and performances? How many hours are we talking about, and the type of work and physical conditioning?
Well, I think one thing you have to think of about a ballet dancer is that a ballet dancer is not only an artist, he or she has to be an athlete also, because the instrument that they're working with, communicating with, is their own body. And the body has to be fine-tuned. As you would tune an instrument, their body has to be kept as tuned as an instrument would be. What I'm doing is telling you all a secret, because when dancers are up there, everything they do is supposed to look absolutely as easy as can be, as wonderful as can be, when actually it isn't easy. You know, when you think of it, when you watch a male dancer lifting a lady, he has to lift, let's say, between 100 and 120 pounds, maybe with one hand, and he doesn't stretch and strain. He's got to make it look like she's a feather, okay? And we all know she's not a feather, but the audience can never know that. To prepare each ballet, that's another thing that I think people don't realize, that the painstaking time involved in putting each step together. And of course, it gets compounded when you have a whole corps of dancers and each one's hand has to be the same way. So it takes hours of preparation to do a very simple motion that looks like the dancer just thought it up on the spur of the moment. But a problem that we have in touring, and I think another thing people don't realize, is it's not, you spend your 10 years that I told you about, you become a dancer. That's not where it ends. You have to have a class every day, at least 6 days a week, of an hour and a half to 2 hours. And this means little Mary Sue, who is just starting out in the ballet, up to Mikhail Baryshnikov. He is still taking classes every day.
But in addition to the classes you're taking, you're also having to go through physical conditioning all at a different time. Is that not correct?
Well, the class is the physical conditioning. And you do that whether or not you're performing and whether or not you're rehearsing. You have to have your class every day to keep your body in shape. But they also have to have this class before they rehearse each day. And they have to have a class before they perform. So on a day, well, today is unusual because they did a school show today and they'll be doing a performance tonight. But on a day when they're doing performance, they may take a class of an hour and a half in the morning and then have another warm-up right before they perform, because it's absolutely important that every part of their body be warmed up, otherwise they can injure themselves very easily.
And that takes quite a bit of time, doesn't it?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
How long would it take to warm up for performance?
Well, generally an hour.
Right. One other thing before we take a look at your performance. Your group is most impressive, but we see that ballet dancers, as they walk, they're carrying large bags, and there's something that I guess many people don't know about, and that is that there's a lot of equipment for a dancer, isn't there? Can you give us some ideas of the things that they must use in preparation for the dance?
Oh, you never separate a ballet dancer from their dance bag. I can't think of a good analogy, but that would be a terrible thing to do. It's like their lifeline, because in their dance bag they have to have, of course, their shoes, and ladies will carry both their ballet slippers, which are soft-soled. I wish I had with me a pair of point shoes, which are supported in the toe of a small box made of paper mache that gives them some small support to stand up on their point. They have to have their dance wear. They have to have warm-up clothing. That is, when they're first starting a class, their body hasn't warmed up yet. They need to put on some warm-ups, which have become very popular wear nowadays, but it used to be that only a dancer would be seen in baggy things like they wear. And heaven forbid the studio should be a little bit cool, which it always is. They have to be sure that they're warm until their body is warmed up. So they put on several layers of these clothing. They're either wool knit or sometimes plastic. And as the warm-up proceeds, you see them peeling off a bit and throwing it to the side until they're down to their dance wear. Then they will all the girls will always have, and usually the men too, needle and thread to repair their costumes. The girls have to be able to sew on their ribbons, and they will generally have extra pairs of ribbons. They always have Band-Aids because, again, I'm telling you a secret that their feet don't look all that good. They have blisters. They have to antiseptic if the blisters open so that they don't get infected, because they have to be always conscious. As I said before, their body is what they're working with. That's all they've got. And they've got to take blessed good care of that to make sure that that's their career. It's really such a tenuous thing, and as an executive director, have to worry so much about injuries, because that, you've invested a lot in that dancer. That dancer knows your ballets, and that's the person trained in your role. If they have an injury, then you have to rearrange your whole tour. You have to find somebody else. You have to rehearse them into the part. And they themselves, their career can be threatened by an injury. So every little bit of something in that dance bag has a function to keep this body in tune.
Very briefly, I would like for you to explain the fact that we're going to show now some ballet from the American Festival Ballet. This was performed at North Idaho College for school children this afternoon before we did this program. What is the American Festival Ballet doing on this given tour?
The repertoire we're performing, well, we have something a little different that we did for the school students. We put together a mixed repertoire. First of all, let me explain that we try very hard to balance what we offer to people and give them some classical, some dramatic ballets, and something very light. One of the ballets that we have this year is called The Comedians, and it is delightful costume, humorous, very lively ballet. And we're very fortunate when we find a ballet that audiences of all ages will enjoy. That is, we can do it for the youngsters this morning, and we performed it so far in Moscow and Lewiston, and the adult audiences love it too. And I think that was the mainstay of our performance. We also did an excerpt from the Beatles ballet that we will be doing in February when we return here. And it isn't complete, but the first section is complete, and we thought that would also be appropriate as the very first thing we show a school audience. But this evening we will also be doing Carmina Burana.
Okay. We're going to take a break, and we're going to show the performance, a segment of the performance of the American Festival Ballet at this time. At this time, we'd like to continue our questioning, and I would at this time turn back to the panel and invite Mary Lou Reed to continue the question.
Well, Joanne, why ballet? What is the special message that ballet conveys as compared with other forms of dance?
Well, now that's interesting. This may sound strange because a lot of people think of ballet in a certain, almost stereotyped way of being Swan Lake, ladies in tutus, and something elitist. But in America, that isn't what ballet is, at least America today. It's a very rich dance language. To me, much less limited than, say, jazz or tap, the other dance forms that you might think of. Because in America, ballet has broadened to express American emotion, American style. For example, the program that I was talking about, we are doing something that's very classical, but also something that's very dramatic and a very light, happy story ballet. You can have ballets that are based on plays, like one of the very first ballets our company did was The Rainmaker, and a Western theme with a Western feeling and Western costumes. And then you go the complete range and you do something like Romeo and Juliet Pas de Deux, very romantic, also costume piece.
But is the body being used in the same way in the classical ballets as it is in the modern ones?
Well,
are you using the same principles of dance?
There's a ballet basis to all of the things that we do. No, that isn't true, because we did a jazz ballet last fall, and that was quite different. Most of everything else we do is based on ballet, in that the ladies are on point and they're working in a turned out position. And those are the two basic steps of your ballet kind of language. But other than that, the answer is no. When they're doing a contemporary ballet, a modern ballet, as opposed to a strictly classical ballet, they will use their body in a different way. They will have more flexibility to use their whole body, as opposed to the kind of control that classical ballet has. And a classical ballet is very light. Everything is always up. When you watch them, it's as though they're floating, and that was the original image of ballet. Modern dance is down to the earth, and you can use you see them doing, I can't get up and dance here. You see them doing a movement with the center part of their body and making themselves feel heavy. Now, a classical ballet dancer would never want to make themselves feel heavy, but by doing a modern ballet, you're still using ballet, but the whole interpretation is different. And that way you can use different kinds of music, because some music is only appropriate for an up feeling and a light feeling, whereas other music you want to express something entirely different. So you use the body differently. So in summary, ballet gives you the whole range, okay?
Janelle Bird.
One of the major issues in perpetuation of the arts is funding. Where do you obtain your funding? How much of it is through ticket sales? And do you have other sources of funding, such as grants and so forth?
How do we obtain our funding? Any way we can, Janelle. I'll tell you, I've been doing this for 12 years. It was a constant struggle when we started, and I kept thinking, this is going to get easier. And I found out not only from my own experience, but from talking to people with larger companies, that as your company grows, your problems only get bigger. They never get easier. Our company is quite self-supporting, as a matter of fact. We get a large percentage of our income, a little over 50%, from ticket income. The rest of it has to be from contributions. And business people say, oh my God, they're only earning 50% of their income. What, 50% of their way, this isn't a going business. It's that way in all of the arts. We depend for a large part on a grant from the Idaho Commission on the Arts, which comes from the National Endowment for the Arts, that helps pay for our rehearsal weeks before we go on the road. And then we have fundraisers wherever we go. And if it wasn't for a very generous and enlightened group of people in this state and region, we wouldn't be in existence. And very many corporations give us grants. But that's part of my job. I'm constantly looking for money. So that's a good question.
Lou Reed, we have about a minute left.
How much of ballet is in the body and how much is in the mind? How important is concentration?
Oh, concentration is very, very important. I think that's another, you focused on a good thing, Lou, because it's an interesting thing about ballet is that it has to be a total thing. You can't dance just with your body, and of course you can't dance just with your mind, or we would be up there. And you have to really be a good dancer. You have to be dancing with your soul as well. So it takes the whole being, and I think that's why the dancers find it such a freeing and exciting thing to do. Because when you think about it, they are killing themselves for very little money and very little reward. So it must be a wonderful, wonderful experience for them. And I think it's because it's their total being that's involved in doing it.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're out of time. And Joanne, on behalf of our staff, I thank you for coming. It's been very informative. Our guest, ladies and gentlemen, has been Joanne Manita, who is the Executive Director of the American Festival Ballet, and she's been discussing with us that very outstanding group, and I hope you get to see them sometime in the future. Please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
The North Idaho College Public Forum can be seen at this same time each week over this station. This production was videotaped earlier by a North Idaho College student crew for viewing at this more appropriate time.